It is as though there is a plot to deter Australians and maybe other nationalities from travelling. It's as though there's a plot from the chief health officers of each state and our federation to be my mother. Ladies, you're not my mother. Stop taking care of me. The hurdles that are put in place are deterring many of my friends. They're saying they simply can't be bothered going overseas. And I say, no, I keep going to put myself up against these hurdles until they say no, which is why I applied to the Australian, what do you call himself, Minister of Home Affairs, twice in the last 2 years to travel overseas and made them say no. Mr. Bolton, you are not allowed to travel to Japan. This was a year ago when Japan was offering half my return airfares and half of all entry fees into major Japanese attractions in order to get people to travel there. And so sometimes people say, John, did you ever try? How do you know you couldn't go? Well, I applied to the minister and I've got the responses back twice and they've said no. And now I'm allowed to go. Japan has taken Australia off the visa not required list. That means I've had to change my plans again. Instead of doing my 16-hour stopover in Tokyo Haneda International Airport at a hotel of my choosing, just a little way out of Haneda, I'm not allowed to leave the Haneda airport. I've spoken to the Japanese embassy and to Japanese airlines, and one gets conflicting information, but it seems as though that I'm allowed to stay in the terminal for up to 24 hours, and I've watched videos of people who've done that. So I went and bought myself a sleeping bag and cancelled the hotel accommodation. And then on the way back, it was a particular want to do of mine to go to the best electronic museum art gallery installation in the world. I think that's uncontroversial. It's in Tokyo near Harita Airport, which is another airport in Tokyo. So I've had to cancel that 3 days because I just can't envisage any bureaucratic capacity to grant me a visa on an Australian passport when I've travelled through France, Alsace-Lorraine, gone up into Germany, even though I won't have stepped off board the ship, and back, and probably gone to Jersey, Channel Islands, or Ile de Normandie, as French call them, and who knows where else. I just can't see the Japanese government opening up and giving me a visa in the time required, or at all, because they've said they're not granting visas. And so these are the complications that my friends say are stopping them from going overseas. I say, don't let it stop you. Just keep pushing it up. Let the bureaucrats make these ridiculous decisions. And right now, I don't even want to go into the Omicron, where people catch a bit of that cold. In Canberra, Australian Capital Territory, one person had a positive test, so they shut down the state. This is ridiculous. When we know anybody who reads the data that's coming in from all over the world knows that Omicron just gives you a little bit of aches and pains. It's not much worse than the cold, let alone the influenza. So I keep pushing those bureaucrats to make adverse decisions, and one day somebody's going to make a decision that I can take them to court about. Anyway, today is Sunday, and I'm flying out on Monday. Now, my flight from Adelaide to Sydney is probably going to be okay. I've just checked in. But I'm getting this information from the Qantas associated airline, which is JAL, Japanese Airlines, from Sydney to Haneda in Tokyo, and then after a 16-hour stopover from Haneda to Tokyo to Paris. Well, with all these restrictions, I'm supposed to have, according to them, a negative COVID test and a statement when I arrive in Tokyo that I haven't had a cold or anything like that, symptoms. And that's just not true. I've contacted the Japanese embassy, and I contacted and spoke to Japanese Airlines Direct. And the truth is, provided I don't leave the transit lounge at Haneda, I don't need a negative test before I leave Australia. And I don't even need an Australian double vax certificate before I leave Australia. But it's so hard to get anything definitive. And so, quite possibly, on Tuesday morning, before I catch my flight from Sydney to Haneda, Tokyo, I'll get a test done. Takes an hour and a half to come back in the Sydney International Transit Lounge. I'll arrive there a couple of hours before, get that test done, just in case the information I got from the Japanese embassy is wrong, even though I checked it today and it seems to be right, because you just never know. And then I've got to land in France. And the best information that I have is, provided that I have a vaccination certificate which relates to a vaccine that's approved by the French government and AstraZeneca, which is what I have, then I'll be able to land and I won't need any further tests at all. However, the French government site also says that these foreign government certificates are acceptable. New Zealand's mentioned, Australia is not mentioned. So where does that leave me when I only have an Australian one? Who knows? Who knows? At some point, at somewhere, I might get turned back, but it is not going to stop me going.